Oh, let's get ready to rumble! Aloha!
Aloha!
Not bad. I'm Todd, as Dan mentioned, and this is Mark. For those of you who don't know us, you're probably at the wrong wedding. You might need to go back to the River Bar. We are incredibly thankful and honored to be best men at the wedding of Nick and Paige, especially considering the caliber of men here. To be the two best. Pretty awesome. You got a Reed, you got a Dan, and a Steve-O, and we're the best. So, anyway, this is my second time giving a wedding speech. Apparently I completely bombed the first. On that day my game plan was a simple 5-scotch warm-up. And then from there just winging it from the heart. Didn't work out so well. So today, new plan. Only like 2 or 3 scotches, and we plan to say absolutely nothing from the heart. Can't miss.
Which I guess is the complete opposite of what Nick would do. Apparently, and we all learned this last night, he told Reed and Caroline, and probably a bunch of other people in this room, within minutes of meeting them, that he was going to marry Paige. So much for playing it close to the chest. But that is the great thing and a very unique thing about Nick. He's so endearingly wears his heart on his sleeve. Of the most heartfelt subjects, he has a way of never mincing words. You always know where he stands. So we're gonna try to take a cue from up here. But it's not an easy task getting up here to give a speech about Nick and Paige. Yes, we've got to do justice to 2 amazing friends and a wonderful relationship. Yes, the bar is incredibly high. Yes, you all are a very discerning audience. And Todd and I have been drinking and partying for the better part of the past 5 days. Today we witnessed the wedding of 2 people that I could stand up here and compliment for a week. But there are also 2 people who really, really love talking about themselves. So Todd, what can we say about Nick and Paige that they haven't already said about themselves?
Mark, I'm kind of at a loss, so maybe we should just call it here.
Well, stop tanking. So everyone here already knows the Tinder story, including some of the homeless people in their neighborhood. You can probably recite that one word for word, so I'm not going to tell that one. We could go with the story about how I threw Nick's banana in the Hudson River, but he's already whined about that to most of the people in this room. So, big deal. Or we could tell one of Paige's marathon stories, but she FaceTimed most of you during the said marathon. You all already know those stories. So we're not going to go with any stories, but before we get to why we're so happy and honored and proud to be here today to talk about these 2, if you want to say a few things about Nick, we're going to set the stage a bit. And let's face it, the only reason why Nick agreed to a wedding is so that he could have his 2 friends come up here and talk about him.
Damn straight.
So we will oblige.
So, when you meet Nick, and even once you've gotten to know him, it seems like he exhibits random acts of fun and awesomeness and can be completely unpredictable at any given moment. But when you really get to know him, you realize that Nick is actually extremely predictable. In several respects, anyway. I.e., if he meets a stranger in Manhattan, what have you, and they hear his accent and ask where he's from, he will inevitably say, "The Bronx." Maybe he's not as predictable as I thought. If you put him in charge of music, it's going to be T Swift, it's going to be Miley Cyrus.
Yeah!
If you get him on the karaoke stage, He's 100% singing Sweet Caroline or Enrique Iglesias' Hero, happens to be more of a slow event. And if he's feeling extra saucy, as I think Caroline mentioned yesterday, it's Under the Sea. If there's delicious dessert at your table, stop me if I'm giving too many examples, but delicious dessert at your table, he is going to go on the offense and he's going to eat the blank out of that dessert, and you're probably not going to get much chance at it. Furthermore, the remains will definitely be on his chin and in the cracks of his mouth for the rest of the day. Everybody knows that about him. But the truth is, most predictably, and what all of us love so much about Nick, is that if he's committed to something, you know he's going to show up with incredible energy, awesome attitude, an open mind, and he's going to be ready to party, even if it's not a party. And whatever it is that you're doing is going to be a lot more fun because he's there. And I stand by that. If he plans something or invites you somewhere or promises a good time, you can bet your ass he's going to deliver.
I stand by that too. But he can also be incredibly stubborn. If he doesn't want to do something, it's a complete waste of time to try to convince him. It's not going to happen. And so here are just a few things that Nick initially decided that he didn't want to do and he abstained from, despite some incessant prodding from smart guys like Chad and I. So the list includes playing golf, playing football, and that's American football for the Brits who probably think he's not very good. He's actually excellent.
Deceiving.
Getting a house in Montauk, or even entertaining the idea of going there, eating vegetables, sleeping in his actual bed, getting a girlfriend, and running, or any sort of exercise outside of playing sport, for that matter. Ultimately, he changed his mind on all of these things, except sleeping in his own bed. He still doesn't actually really do that all the time, and currently loves all of them.
Nick also loves the spotlight. Shocker. He is a natural as the center of attention. He's a great storyteller, can dominate the center of the dance floor, and even though he will begrudgingly admit that I've got him edged out on the karaoke stage, his passion and energy could put Mick Jagger to shame. He's got a huge personality that we really all do gravitate towards, and he genuinely brings great people together. Ohana. Mr. Robertson. While he loves being the center of attention, we all also put him in that position because he's such a natural and has the ability to make any person feel comfortable. With all that said, for someone with all of these great social qualities, he sure had a blind spot when it came to dating. For 12 or 13 years that I knew Nick, before he met Paige, if you asked me what type of girl he liked, I would have had no idea how to answer. He was undoubtedly more interested in drinking beer, watching sport, and going on bar crawls with the guys, and I can't blame him, we're kind of awesome. But rather than dates, I think it's better to say he had encounters, which usually ended in hilarious stories of how they went completely awry. And if anything did go beyond date one, it would inevitably end soon thereafter for a very fickle reason. There was the girl who told bad jokes, the one who was too quiet, the one who talked too much, bad at handball, the girl who didn't like peanut butter, it just goes on.
Okay, so that's what we have to say about Nick. And so for a quick recap, it's predictable, can be stubborn as an ox, big personality, spotlight lover, not really a dater. And then there was a turn of events which led to Nick and Paige. Some would call it a complete 180 from his most prominent characteristics. Starting from their first date, and this has already been talked about a lot, but Paige would only meet him if they went for a 6 a.m. run. Now, if you asked Todd or I at the time, we would have both said game over. Nick didn't date, nor did he run, or even exercise for that matter. And he certainly did not do it at 6 a.m.
No exaggeration here. As a quick tangent, Mark, if you don't mind, just an example of his utter disdain and complete ineptitude for exercise. Let's take it back to St. John's Tennis. We had our annual workout test, circa 2003. Each team member had to do the maximum sit-ups they could do in a minute. Guys are doing 30, 40, 50, you know, pretty good shape. Nick, 0. He couldn't muster a single sit-up in 1 minute.
Someone sit up the day before.
He sat up to go to the kitchen and get his chocolate ice cream. Anyway, back to you, Mark.
Okay, back to the story. So somehow, and in very unpredictable fashion for Nick, the first date happened, which then led to a second date. Now, second date was a disaster. It ended in a fake call from Charles to Nick about a fake emergency in their apartment, the 102, so that Nick could escape. So smart money at that point would have said, that's it, great running date, you know, game over. Nick had mastered coming up with all sorts of ridiculous reasons not to pursue girls in the past, but apparently waking up at 5 a.m., running, and a pretty bad real first date didn't stop him. So we couldn't really figure out what was going on. So date 3 happened, and several more, and things started going really, really well. Even their mutual love for the spotlight sorted itself out, and they were somehow able to compromise on being the center of attention. Now, I don't think Nick would have predicted that he'd occasionally give up the center of their dance circle to his future wife. And I doubt Paige figured that her husband's love of the worm and his emphasis on his butt while dancing would match some of her signature moves, the sprinkler, the stanky leg, whatever else it is that she's doing out there. But
do some sprinkling.
But there was clearly some kind of force at work, something which got Nick to do a few extremely uncharacteristic things. Now, you can blame it on fate, or timing, maybe blind luck, love at first sight, but that's not really what's important. From day 1 of their relationship, Nick was willingly out of his comfort zone. He was challenged, and he was doing new things, and I think that's a sign of a great relationship. Yes, Nick can be stubborn, but Paige has a unique way with him, an influence over him. She gets him to do things that many people aren't able to.
So maybe to this point we've exaggerated a bit. But hey, Nick always says, the truth is irrelevant so long as the story's good. Yes, Nick was out of character, but once you spend a few minutes with Paige, it all starts to make a lot of sense. One of the first times I met Paige, she showed up to dinner dressed in her signature Sriracha bottle dress, which I overheard her shamelessly call the closer.
True story.
Sorry. I've always considered myself a glass half full kind of guy, but even I can learn a lesson from Paige on optimism. She's open-minded, adventurous, up for anything. If anyone in this room, for example, would like to skydive while eating rattlesnake and getting a tattoo, Paige's only question is going to be, who's bringing the sunscreen? Sun cream for the Brits. One of my favorite Paige moments is seeing her on the course during our sprint triathlon, which she decided to do literally the night before with barely any training. Her 1980s beach cruiser bike, which she picked up last minute, clearly stood out, a whack bike among the rest. Not good for the older people here. But even though her bike had a basket and probably couldn't keep up with a decent jogger, there is no doubt she was having more fun on that track than anyone else. She even sent me off with a jovial, "Todd, you're doing great, keep going." And she was like hunched over the bench. She was so happy. She really has the unique ability to cut out all stress, distractions, and any negativity, and really just enjoy things for what they're worth.
Her optimism, Paige's amazingly positive attitude, her demeanor and her energy make me sometimes wonder if we're living on the same planet. And to that, I remind myself that we are, and that I should probably take a few cues from her. As my summer roommate in Montauk, I very, very much appreciate that she's mastered a balance between being a frequent accomplice, an occasional bad influence, and when necessary at times, a concerned mother or sister. We know that Nick loves all of these qualities, all of these unique things about Paige that we love. But there's one